Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guests introduce themselves to the listeners and viewers at home. So we're going to start with Madam Chloe, first of her name.
Hello, good evening. I am Chloe Garner, authoress of massive worlds of science fiction, fantasy, and urban fantasy, and delighted to get to talk about strong and interesting heroines because they are my favorite.
Absolutely. Next, we have Mr. Declan Finn.
Declan Finn. I've written about 40 novels. I think all of them are published by now, or at least on pre-order. I write in any genre that's not nailed down, and some that are. And we've got 6 guests, so keep going.
All right, next we have the mini personalities of Jana S Brown.
Hi there, I'm Jana S Brown. I write science fiction, fantasy, and urban fantasy under Jena Rey, and I like talking about heroines. And I'm representing my tween daughter today because she found out what the subject was. And she said, I want to come and be on. And I went, you're 11, you're not allowed. So she's given me thoughts that if it is appropriate, I am supposed to interject on her behalf so that the younger readers are represented in this whole thing.
So you could technically,
so I need a third personality.
If you had kids on, it gets a little weird because the European laws against exploitation of minors, because I guess the crazy families that were filming their kids. But you could get around that if we could figure out how to blur faces and let them come on and nerd out, and you get around it. But that's very tech heavy, so I would have to do a lot of research on that.
Have her yelling
on the side.
Yeah.
She holds up signs.
Have her off to the side.
We could just be avatars, couldn't we?
Yeah, that would work. All right, next we have Miss Jennie, JF Posthumous.
I am JF Posthumous. I write science fiction, fantasy, urban fantasy. Majority of my stuff is through Three Ravens Publishing. Mm-hmm. I'm so boring, I know.
It's okay. All right, next we have Miss Katie Cross.
Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Cross. I write young adult fantasy in the world of Alcara, and I really, really like dragons and interesting women.
Dragons are cool. I mean, wolves are cooler, but, unfortunately, not enough people have bought that series for you to write more of it. I'm so bitter.
No, we're going to finish it. He's talking about a trilogy that we have, and the third book's just taking a long time to come out, is all. We'll finish it.
Definitely worth the wait. All right. Next, we have Miss Melissa McShane.
Hi, I'm Melissa McShane. I write fantasy in many different subgenres, including historical fantasy, contemporary fantasy, secondary world fantasy. I am coming to you from India in a house with marble floors and 10-foot ceilings, and they call me Madam when I am in the car driving places.
Nice. All right. And now that we're here, we're going to do the religion question. And again, these people are all repeat customers. We have a lot of friends that like coming back. So instead of the boring, favorite sci-fi and fantasy, we're going to make them themed to the topic tonight. So first, who is your favorite female action hero from the movies? We'll go over round robin. So Katie, who's yours?
Arwen from Lord of the Rings.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent choice. And if I'm doing show notes, that's going to be a lot to spell, but we'll go with it. All right. Next, we have Melissa.
Ripley from Aliens. I made my kids watch the final great battle between Ripley and the alien queen when they were young, so they would know that monsters could be defeated.
Okay. That's a good one. All right. Next, we have Declan, because we're just going to go round robin.
Oh, okay. I'll actually go with Geena Davis from The Long Kiss Goodnight, where she was basically playing female Jason Bourne, and she actually pulled it off fairly well. I am a little sad that movie got spiked because, well, her previous one was not as good.
What was the name of the character?
Charlie. I forget the last name because she had like 2 or 3 of them within the movie itself.
Okay. All right, next we have Jennie, J.F. Posthumous.
I'd have to go with Eowyn from Lord of the Rings. I mean, Arwen was awesome. She's an elf, but Eowyn was the one who actually went out and fought. And, you know, she had it. Her character arc was so much fun. But also, the other half said I'm more Eowyn than Arwen, so who am I to argue?
I'm not touching that one. So, Jana.
I'm really fond of the Gal Gadot Wonder Woman. I like that she's a good balance of being, you know, kick butt hero, but she takes time to enjoy ice cream and still coos over babies. So she was allowed to be both feminine and kick ass at the same time.
It helps that she has some experience doing stuff in real life because she was a soldier once too. Gal Gadot, I mean, which kind of makes it a little bit more believable because it doesn't look like she's never moved her body in a way that's martial before. Some actresses just can't pull it off. It's like they're just going through the blocking with no understanding of what's going on. And that didn't happen with the ones mentioned so far. All right, next we have Miss Madam Chloe.
I'm going to pull out the trump card and go with River Tam.
Okay.
You cannot beat that character, that series. I stand where I stand.
Okay. All right, so for me, if we're going from the big screen, it's going to either be Sarah O'Connor or Ellen Ripley, just because, you know, there's childhood right there, and nostalgia wins every time. All right, next we have your favorite female hero from the TV screen instead, Katie.
I said Daenerys from Game of Thrones because, as we've already established, dragons are my fave. She did really well. I really like her as an actress.
But the creator of Game of Thrones broke all the rules when it comes to making characters that you can spell their names. So I'm going to have to look that up for later for the show notes, because he just threw the alphabet together, I think, and was like, we can do this.
It may have been Welsh.
Yeah.
I am absolutely convinced that Welsh is not a real language. They don't actually speak that. They just do that to mess with the English when they come visit, and then they go back to talking normal when they're gone. It's a conspiracy.
It's an interesting one.
All right, Melissa.
I'm going back to Firefly for Zoe for this one. Find Zoe absolutely fascinating.
Okay. You can't go wrong with Firefly anything.
That's right.
All right. Next, we got Mr. Declan, favorite from the TV screen.
That one's going to be tough because, on the one hand, I'm a fan of Babylon 5, where it's, do you pick Delenn or Ivanova? But I also grew up in a household that watched The Avengers. And no, I don't mean the Marvel franchise. I mean Diana Rigg playing a amateur spy from the 60s. And yeah, she was fun. So let's go with The Avengers and Miss Emma Peel, if you want the character name. That's an easy one for you to spell.
I appreciate that. Normally, I got Stabby here to do the show notes for me, and I can look it up later. But she went to a family wedding and thought like family was more important than me. I don't know what the heck's up with that. Lame. All right, Jennie, favorite from the TV screen.
There's a lot, but I think I'm going to be the oddball and say Beckett from Castle.
Ooh, excellent choice.
She's good.
I've forgotten about her.
I mean, she was a fun character, and until now, mind you, I cannot rewatch it because I can see how the characters did not get along after the first season or two. But the first time watching it, I loved it until they jumped the shark. But she's a really good character. I mean, she goes through a lot in that series.
And it's got Nathan Fillion, so can't go wrong there. Also tieback. The daughter, I can't remember the character's name. The redhead that was Castle's daughter in that show is pretty good too.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Molly Quinn?
Molly.
Quinn. Yeah. I don't remember the character name, but she was a good actress. I haven't seen her in much since then. Alexis, there we go.
Yeah, and Alexis had a really her character arc, was pretty good too, because as a character, she went through a lot of different things that a lot of teens will go through.
Mhm.
And if you watched it, the whole arc, you watched her grow up with you on screen for people that were the right age, which is, part of what makes some of the TV series hit longer for people nostalgically than some of the actual movies, because you've got that longer kind of quasi, what do they call it, parasocial relationship. So, all right, Jana, from the TV screen.
I am throwing back to Buffy. Buffy is a great heroine, and again, really, really balanced, because you got the teenage angst and I just want to go to the prom and I will, kill everything I have to for my friends to have a good prom. And I'm like, yeah, I felt that way. So, but Buffy is my hero.
Mhm.
Yeah, I liked the movie a little bit better than the TV series, only because the end scene was so iconic, like that death scene that was not intended. It was just goofing off and they left it. I liked that. And when they had the final showdown and they're like, what are you going to do? Throw the cross at me? She's like, no, it's my keen fashion sense. And she uses the lighter and the hairspray and burns him. Like that was classic. I dig it. So,
It
all
was
right.
campy and fun, but the TV got the same thing where we grew up with her.
Yeah.
And kind of went through some of those same things, the transition to college, transition to adulting. So, yeah, longer lasting.
There were a lot of other female characters on the show that were equally strong and, interesting characters. Willow, Anya, even Cordelia, if you think about it.
You follow the Angel spinoff, and Cordelia has a whole arc out of her, too.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And Willow was a pretty fun character with the magic stuff, if you take that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Chloe, for the TV screen.
So it depends on how you phrase the question, what the right answer is. If you're asking for favorite female lead in sort of an action-y series, I hit Veronica Mars. And just such a fantastic character with all of her clever, but she herself is not an action hero. So if we're really looking for an action hero female, I'm going to go esoteric, and it's Dutch from Killjoys. It's a Canadian series that I am going through for like the third time presently. It's just fantastic. And she's a compelling and convincing physical action hero, where a lot of women do the same moves that you would have a male action hero do, and they have stuntmen who just do giant flips in order to go along with it. And I like the way that the action is shaped in the Killjoy setup.
Okay. So for me, I'm going back to my childhood again, nostalgia for the win. It's going to be Xena from Xena Warrior Princess. Gabrielle was pretty cool too. She grew in the later in the series to becoming more of a badass, which I dug, because she was kind of a peacenik hippie type in the beginning. And then she realized the world wasn't as nice as she thought it was. So she kind of had to grow up. So I dig that. But you guys have given some great examples too. So finally, this is going to be the one that's going to be so hard because there's so many options. But your favorite female hero or heroine, I guess, from literature. And Katie, first with you.
I'm going to go with Kerrigan from the Green Rider series. I'm just getting into that, and I really, really like Kerrigan. She's awesome.
Okay. I haven't read that one. Is the series good?
Yeah, it's really good. It's like set in, well, I'm on the first book. I'm finishing that one up, but it's kind of like medieval sort of feel. She wants to be part of this like Green Riders. It's kind of like not quite sword and sorcery, but kind of is sword and sorcery. There's magic and that kind of stuff as far as I read, but Kerrigan's a really fun character.
Okay. All right. Next we have Melissa from literature.
Oh, my favorite that I keep coming back to is from the young adult novel Crown Duel. The main character, Mel, is involved in a revolution, and the story just keeps going from there. And there's romance, there's action, there's enemies to lovers, and she is in the middle of all of this, remaining true to herself, even as she discovers that who she thought she was maybe isn't the right person to be.
And you said, what was the character's name?
Her name is Meliara. She goes by Mel. And she's the main character of Crown Duel, which is you have to look for the author's preferred edition because she published it traditionally, got it back, got the rights back, published it again, and so there are different versions, but Mel is the same in all of them.
All right, and we will link to the actual books in the show notes so that way you guys can check them out yourself. All right, Declan from literature.
That would be Karen Murphy from the Dresden Files.
Okay. All right, Jennie.
You're muted.
Favorite character from literature. Probably Mercy Thompson from Patricia Briggs from that series. I mean, there are some novels I will not reread because I couldn't get into them as much, but the character is, she starts out as a mechanic, and she's a mechanic because she had a history degree. So she couldn't get a job as, a teacher. So she gets hired on as a mechanic. And
Oops.
Uh-oh.
She glitched again.
So for those that, the others of you have mentioned Patricia Briggs, Mercy Thompson. What's the name of that series for anyone who wants to check it out?
The
I thought it was the Mercy Thompson series.
Oh, that's the name of the series.
Mercy Thompson.
Yeah, she doesn't have a separate name for it.
All right, Jana, favorite from the literature.
Kate Daniels. Ilana Andrews does the Kate Daniels series, and I like Kate. I'm fond of that we get to see in the whole arc. We get to see her as a badass, but also as a mom and as a family person, and all of those different parts are really interesting, and they're just as important as her ability to be a fighter.
And what's the series?
Kate Daniels by Ilana Andrews.
Oh, that's the name of the series too. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of your urban fantasy, you get the name of the character.
The name of the character.
Okay, clearly I need to broaden my reading horizons. All right, next we have Madam Chloe.
Granny Weatherwax.
All right.
That was on my short list.
Yep.
She's amazing.
Yep. No, she is clever and she is stubborn, and she really doesn't look at the conflict as something that she's going to overcome so much as something that is going to go under her, because it's always a matter of perspective.
And what was her name? I'm sorry.
Granny Weatherwax from the
Discworld.
From the Discworld series, yeah.
Okay. And then for me, I'm gonna have to go young adult just because I've read it and it's just what popped to my mind. But Annabeth Chase character in the Rick Riordan Percy series, Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief.
Nice.
So, that was.
I'm amused that nobody actually mentioned Honor Harrington.
Again, books have too many options. If I thought about it for a second, I could probably come up with 100 that I would go, oh yeah, and her. Oh, and what about?
No, I'm debating between this and 14th century Italian poetry as my, like here.
So many options.
I don't know, like it's gonna be an unpopular opinion, but I thought Honor Harrington was just a little too perfect and it got boring. I read the series for other reasons. I read it because I liked to see how he did the battles. I read it because I thought the world was interesting. But Honor Harrington was just, I don't know. She wasn't my favorite character in the book. So let the hate mail come. I know I'm going to get it. I mean, I still get hate mail from my opinion on Starship Troopers, and we aired that one in 2016. So,
yeah. Hey, I tried reading the first one and I couldn't get through it either. So don't feel bad.
I mean, he's definitely a machine. He's got fans. He knows his audience, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know. I like some of the books. I just didn't like the her character specifically. It just didn't do it for me. But the Talking Cats was kind of cool.
Oh,
Talking Cats is always good. Well,
the Tree Cats. I mean, unless you're their dinner, then it's probably not as good. All right, so today's topic was obviously, it was suggested by the ladies, and so we decided it was time to get it on the books, was talking about interesting heroines. So to be a heroine, let's define our terms. Obviously, heroine is the feminine of hero. To be a hero, does one have to be an action hero, or are there other ways that females can be interesting heroines without it being necessarily physical?
I have a definition that reduces that to the bare bones, which is that an interesting heroine is someone who has agency and uses it in interesting ways to change the world. So that encompasses every kind of hero that you could be. You don't have to be a kick-ass heroine to be someone who draws the reader's attention, someone who the reader can care about.
Okay, does everyone agree with that definition? Does that work for them?
Yeah. We think about the physicality, but just think about the news and how many times is it, mother saves her kids by doing a thing. And it's often not necessarily even moving a car. It's she wakes up and gets them out of the way. She realizes there's a problem. These are normal women who do heroic things and normal men who do heroic things, but it's that changing. It's that you're getting involved and you have agency to do it.
Okay.
Because if things are just if it's a female character and things are just happening to her, that's not interesting. It's not interesting in anyone. But women, not historically in the sense of our history, but in terms of literary women, there have been many female characters who have just been there as window dressing or as someone for other people to act through. So not being able to act makes the character less interesting and sometimes not even a character. Sometimes they're just a plot point. So I think agency is the key to making a heroine interesting.
Mm-hmm. I think it's the use of that agency that then makes them the hero or heroine, right? Whatever, like it doesn't have to be an epic story. This could be a middle grade story about a kid struggling in their school or something. But I think it's all about how that's used and put to use in whatever world they inhabit. I think that is the greatest definition I've ever heard. Like, hats off to you.
Thank you.
It's stating the same thing a different way, but I'm looking for characters who are all the hero of their own story. And favorite female heroes don't have to be the lead. They just have to be the hero of their own story and be off having their own adventures on their own story. And they don't have to have an action role. It doesn't even have to be a physical role. But women who go out and they do things because they are the main actor in their own story, and that's how they see themselves.
Channeling my tween, her example was that Princess Cimarine in The Enchanted Forest is a very interesting female character because she's always acting and doing things, and she's still a princess and she still makes Cherry's Jubilee and all those kinds of things. But no matter where she is in the series, even when she's not the point of view character, she's still doing things that matter to the plot, whether it is her doing it for her story or because she's supporting somebody else. So she's always interested. She always has something to say. She's always involved. And then she gets really mad because we read Fablehaven, and she says Kendra the sister never gets to do anything cool, and her job is to be a worrywart and a tattletale. So she worries about what her brother's doing. She tells the grown-ups what everybody else is doing, but she doesn't actually ever act on it herself or have thoughts that are interesting and opinions that are her own. And so every time we read that series, my daughter just gets mad because she's like, here's the girl for me to connect to, but she's the least interesting person in the entire book. And she never wants that. She always wants that girl that she wants to associate with to be somebody who is doing stuff so that she can say, oh yeah, if I was in this book, that's totally the kind of thing that I would do coming up as a young reader. She wants that purpose and that I'm going to be involved, not I'm just going to tell the adults that my brother's off doing something cool.
Yes, but this is just the definition of good storytelling. I mean, you want a negative example of this. There was a book called Jude the Obscure, where male character. He is the title character, but things just happen to him throughout the entire book. He is a complete zero. He is almost a negative plot point, which, hell, you read Neil Gaiman's American Gods, where our main character, I guess, or at least our point of view character, is a guy named Shadow, who, after the first 150 pages, I gave up because, dude, you're not affecting this plot at all. Why are you here? Why am I reading about you? And you know what? I don't care. Bling. I threw that book pretty hard, and then I went and read Tim Powers, who did a better version of the story anyway.
Not every character has to be agented. They're real people who just have life happen to them. That's a real human characteristic.
Yes, but that's not a hero. I don't know why he has a title character, and I don't care.
No.
Like, congratulations. I'm not going to read it.
When you're looking at a book full of boys and the one girl character lacks agency, I can totally understand how that's really disappointing, because you're looking to identify, especially as a teen tween girl, you're looking for that female character that you're going to identify with, even if she isn't the main character, even if she isn't the core of the story. You're looking for that girl to go do something interesting. And yeah, it's disappointing to find that there just isn't one, because the one girl doesn't have any agency. It's very sad.
Well, if you think about some of the murder mysteries, like, I don't know about y'all, but Nancy Drew, she was the heroine of the stories. She was an interesting character because not only, okay, her father's a lawyer, if I remember correctly, but she was always put in a situation where she had to figure out a puzzle or a mystery of some sort, and how she goes about it is interesting. Her friends, her relationships with those around her makes it interesting. And later, you have the Nancy Drew Hardy Boys super mysteries. You see her relationships with the Hardy Boys. And, all of that makes for an interesting character. You don't have to be, kicking ass with a weapon of any sort to be an interesting character or to be a hero of some sort. Because she was the hero, because she solved the mysteries, she solved the problem. She would rescue herself, her friends, whatever. And, for those who aren't wanting to read, the sword and sorcery, magic, urban fantasy, romance, that stuff, who admittedly I grew up on mysteries because that's what my parents loved. But you can still get the Nancy Drew books. There's still a fandom out there for them. And, even there you have the interesting characters. You have the hero just in a different way. Kate Beckett is kind of a grown-up version of Nancy Drew because she's out solving mysteries. She's not always using her gun or fighting the bad guy. She's, having to put pieces of a puzzle together and interview people and do things that way. But she's still interesting because it's how she does it. It's, her life.
Well, you could use that as an example for the adult version of that would be Angela Lansbury's character, Jessica Fletcher, in Murder, She Wrote. She wasn't an action girl, but she certainly got shit done. I do like the conspiracy theories that she was the actual serial killer and she was faking her own murder to frame people. That's right up there with the creepy hair guy that does the paintings about he's painting where the bodies are. Like those mystery, like the fanatics with those conspiracy theories are amusing. So but okay, we're gonna pause for a moment while we shamelessly chauffeur the man, and I picked this commercial specifically because the main character I wrote in the short story in this anthology was female pilot. I thought was pretty badass. So, and with that, boom.
Across 1,000 battlefields and 1,000,000 wars, there is always a question. What do you do when all the chips are on the table? Do you run? Try to find salvation in the arms of an easy peace? Or do you stand and fight and send your enemies into whatever hole they crawled out of? On Deadly Ground, a heroic Last Stand anthology, has 10 stories addressing that question. Each character faces the impossible in different ways, but all will be tested before the day is done. Can they earn a heroic victory amongst the endless eternity of space, or are they doomed to fall into obscurity?
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. So I actually wrote that series with a friend of mine's wife. The short story that's in there, at some point, whenever life, we're going to come back and write that as a series. But my claim to fame on that one is I gave her husband, who a friend of mine is an Air Force colonel, I gave him the Forrest Whitaker eye as I wrote to my my pilot was a little too Army and not enough realism, so we had to edit it.
Oh,
So I'm happy that I gave him at least 3 gray hairs with that one. So it's gotta have goals, right? Baby steps. All right, so
that is why I don't write military, because I don't know anything about it and I refuse to get it wrong.
I can tell you, no matter when it comes to mil sci-fi, no matter what you write, someone's going to complain. I know a guy who's legitimately a snake eater, was former Green Beret, and there are people that will write in the comments, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. That's not how they do it. I'm like, dude, you did it for real. What are you talking about? I know the guy. And so I've come to accept that people will complain about anything, and so you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt.
True.
So, but I could go on rants, and this is not the topic today, so we're going to stick on target. We're gonna talk about interesting female heroines. So, do you guys think that there's any medium that makes a better portrayal of female heroines? Do you think they come out better on the screen or in books, or do you think it's too subjective?
I think for the visual media, it's a lot easier to get the kick-ass heroines because people want to see the fighting and the action and the exciting thing. But in the abstract sense of is it easier for just a heroine in general, I don't think it matters. I think it's you have different options with every medium, and that's the case for everything, not just heroines.
Well, and along that same line, in written form, you can have the characters' inner thoughts, inner monologue, whatever, showing, what's behind their actions. And you can't do that but so much with visual. With visual, you have to go off of their actions.
And the body language.
And the body language and how they are around them. You don't get the inner feeling. So, you have that too. So in some ways, written could be easier depending on the story you're writing.
Yeah.
I think I would throw my hat into written just because there's a depth of character and amount of time that you typically spend with these characters in like a book versus a show. So that's not always true, of course, but generally, like if you look at something like the Harry Potter series, a lot of people know Harry Potter. You're getting to know characters like Hermione and Jennie and Mrs. Weasley and this McGonagall, but you have like these like 7, how many books are 7 books? They're huge, right? You spend so much more time with these characters in the actual details because J.K. Rowling is very flow of life. There's like entire just pages after page after page just talking about what they did for a while. So you just get to know them more in depth that way. You spend more time with them. And I think sometimes that builds it to a different depth than what you see on the screen. What you see on the screen, you can communicate a lot just in what they're wearing and the environment that you put them in. But I still don't think it's exactly the same as doing it written. The other one that's interesting, because it's kind of both, is audio, right? Like I think the presentation of heroes and heroines in audio, even though it's directly pulled from like written form, is still a very different presentation because you get a little bit of the voice acting and emotion that can come through audio with a good narrator. You have the written story and the time spent. So I think that's kind of an interesting like way to look at it too.
You've asked a question to a group of largely readers and authors, which means that you're going to get a really, really biased selection of answers. What I will say is that I am incredibly biased and picky about female actresses, about actresses, and how the selection bias in Hollywood, especially in Hollywood, but also in television, tends to be very, very petite women. And there's just not a lot of women that I love Gina Carano just because she goes so strongly against the selection biases that we have in existence in visual media. We don't have bigger, stronger women because they just aren't what the industry is looking for, and so we don't get that same skill bias promoting the women of larger structures and stronger women. And in a book, you can build a woman however she needs to be in order to fill the backstory, the role that she holds. And I love writing women who are 6'1", 6'2", and throw cows. It's just, I love writing that. And you can't find women who do that. I want Andre the Giant as a woman. And it's just the industry doesn't quite select for that in the way that I wish that it worked.
It also goes towards age, because Hollywood is very ageist, I guess is the word. There's a lot of ageism where after you hit a certain age, you're only allowed certain roles. And there are not a lot of roles for that age group. So they basically age out, I guess is a good way of putting it. And, you know, even when you have, I haven't watched Bridgerton, but I do watch the snippets on my Facebook reels. But you look at the ages of the actresses versus the age they portray, there's a difference. There's often a gap there. And if you also think about it, what Hollywood produces, they have more younger characters. They will drop the ages of characters. And in literature, you can have your character being any age, looking any age, and have them doing everything that, you know, a 20, 30-year-old could do within reason.
The funny part is exact opposite with male characters. So if you look at any of the movies that got like military type settings, everybody's in their 40s. And I could tell you, like, for instance, you know, if they're doing period, most of the people that would have been there would have been the 19 to 22 range, but everyone in the acting is like 40-ish. And so you see a little bit of that with the movies too. I will say that the comics, graphic novels, animated anything, and books have the advantage that they're not constrained by budgets. Whereas some of the stuff that you'd like to do, like for instance, Katie loves dragons. Dragons are very expensive to put on the screen. Not so expensive when words are free to throw in a book or to draw or to animate. And so I think you can get a depth that you won't get on a straight TV screen with other mediums.
Yeah.
Well, and it's a matter of time and focus. How long do you get to spend with the character and how deep can you go? Which is why some of our favorites when we were talking about TV are ones that are in series or that are, you know, that we have. Buffy gave us 7 seasons to grow up with her. Veronica Mars gave us several seasons. We had that time with those characters and it was focused. And a lot of those shows, it's focused on a smaller ensemble cast or a couple of main characters. Uh-oh, we lost Declan. He got overrun by estrogen and left.
Maybe he thought whatever was going on with me.
Yes, but so when we had that time, and it's something that a lot of movies don't give us, but then we had both Arwen and Eowyn from the movie versions that came up as favorites, but we have 3-hour movies and they got bigger plots and more screen time than what they generally got in Lord of the Rings. My daughter was very frustrated about that because she's like, I watched the movie and Arwen did these cool things and she's waiting for it in the book and it never happened. She's like, but who's this Glorfindel guy? That's not a guy.
Poor Glorfindel.
No, she's not. That was a choice. And so it's also the time that we get and then how focused are they on them as a character? Because that's going to give us a lot too. If we've got one movie and they're only in there for a short period of time, you just don't have the time to get to know them.
But we're also talking about the intersection between books and movies when we talk about Lord of the Rings as a movie property, having been literature first. And so I think that some of the strongest movie portrayals, when they don't have that television, we can do 7 seasons. I think a lot of the strongest movie portrayals are ones where we know these characters from the books and we have an investment in them to begin with. So it does come back to the books in general. I think, what we've been saying is that the movies are limited, TV is limited, books have very few limitations like that, especially now that we're living in the age of self-publishing, where you're not necessarily going through the gatekeeper of a publisher to decide how long your series can be or what it looks like.
It is interesting, though, when you have people who are discussing like Lord of the Rings or the Harry Potter movies / books, and someone has read the books and the other person hasn't, and they're complaining about, well, the movie did this, the books did this, there's this difference, there's that difference. A lot of times that can get the person to be like, I need to read the book now because I've only watched the movie.
Yeah.
And that's a way to get them into reading.
Mm-hmm.
Not always. There's always people who are like, I hate reading. I'll never read the book. I don't care. But I've also seen it as many to go, oh, maybe I should read the book because they got all of these things wrong. I want to see what the book is like.
So we've spent a lot of time focusing on human females that are heroines. Do you think that the females that are non-human can be as relatable to people? And I'll give you, for instance, the female dragon that they just named Dragon in the movie Damsel, who was attacking this kingdom because they, killed her family. And so in the end, she gets her agency by getting her revenge. But that's certainly a female character that's relatable, because who wouldn't do, dark and dirty deeds to protect their children or avenge them if something happened? I think that universal parental law.
Look at Star Wars. Look at Star Trek. To go with the popular ones, you have female characters of other races, and they can be just as interesting as humans. So I don't see where the race really plays a key part in who can be a hero or how they can be relatable.
Except we listed all humans when we were listing, which is why I asked the question.
Well, I agree. I agree that they don't have to be human to be relatable, but the further you get from the human physiology, I think the more you have to work at keeping them relatable. And it's, well, like you were saying about the dragon having, relatable needs that humans have. I have a series where the main character is a dragon. She remains a dragon for the series. She is not a shapeshifter, and she is an alien mindset. But in the end, she cares about things the way that humans do. And I think that makes her relatable, even though she's not only not physically human, but she genuinely does not understand the human motivations in some cases. But yeah, I don't think that it, being non-human at all prohibits them from being an interesting heroine.
Yeah, because we're still building that same idea of, are they doing interesting things? And relationships are important to making them a three-dimensional character. So another one of my favorites is Duchess from the Aristocats. She is a good mom. She takes care of her kids. She falls in love, realizes that even though it's love, it can't be. And she's willing to make that sacrifice, even though she doesn't want to. And she's a cat. She's a fluffy, adorable kitty, and yet does all of these things, and even joins in when the fighting comes up, not because that's her thing, but something is threatening her kittens, and she is going to have to bite it in the butt, because that's just what you do. But I think she's a great heroine.
Look at Lady of the Tramp. It's about 2 dogs, but people love the movies. Land Before Time. All of that.
Yeah, that's another good one.
There's a lot of movies, not always Disney, but they have the most.
Well,
I
but
think.
animated tends to pop up when we
Yeah.
talk about
But,
these.
there's a lot of movies out there that you have characters that are animals or creatures of some sort, and they're loved as much, if not more, than those who have human characters.
Mhm.
I mean, let's look at Lilo and Stitch. Yeah, you have
Mm.
Lilo and the humans. Who do people really love? They really love Stitch the most. I mean,
I think
It's a
that
thing.
one of the reasons that we all bring up female human characters is just a selection bias that most of the protagonist characters in adult fiction are human. And
Yeah.
I think that I'm thinking about the trajectory that Lord of the Rings took, where it was originally about hobbits, and we had to kind of shift it over and make it about a massive human drama in order to be a vehicle to tell a story about hobbits, because the interest was in how humans fit into it. There are lots of fantastic female elven characters in Lord of the Rings, and yet we pick the humans. And there's just something that's just who we are. I've long thought that the reason science fiction and fantasy are the best at asking questions about what it means to be human is because we suspend all of the rules of our actual reality, so we don't have to fight about the things that we always fight about. We can look at what does it mean to be human without the conflicts that are really distracting from that. And we just make our own rules. And so we like to put humans into places where there are no existing rules about how humans have to be. And it's just this little science experiment about what does it actually mean to be human. And that's what's fascinating about it. And you add in your alien characters and you add in your fae races. And yet we all talk about how the humans interact with those people, because that's the point of the science experiment, maybe, I think.
Well, look at Kate Beckinsale in Underworld.
Mhm.
They're still they're vampires, but they're still more or less human,
Mhm.
and they've got human conflicts even as vampires.
Mhm.
But also, like all of the cartoons you named are just humanized animals. Like they're not like cats don't actually talk. They don't actually act.
Wait, don't tell me.
No,
thank-
sometimes they do.
Thank goodness they don't talk.
The secrets we tell.
We're only interested in these characters as much as we can relate to them and their humanity, because like we can't relate to a cat's non-existent inner dialogue, right? And so all of the quote unquote non-human characters that we brought up are just anthropomorphized animals anyway, and they're interesting. I feel like the women are interesting to us even as quote unquote animals as much as their femininity interacts with it. So what I mean is women, I think, like singling out a woman as interesting is a lot of just coming at the specific challenges and loves and things that a woman faces because she is feminine, right? So like the mama cat from Aristocrats, we saw a feminine figure just in a different form, but actually experiencing the same drives and motivations that we felt. So she's interesting to us as a female because of those inherent drives and struggles in that persona, right? And so when we talk about interesting women, whether we anthropomorphize, whatever, I can't say it. We make them women, right? They still have the same struggles that we do as actual human females. Because like, I can't remember who said it, but when you get too far outside the human perspective, like we can't relate to the aliens because we don't experience that life. So
that's right.
Well, if you think about it, when you write characters that are just cold and evil and have no humanity, we've all read news articles and horror stories, true horror stories about the person who just snapped and was sociopathic to the point that what they did is incomprehensible to a lot of people because it's so unhuman. It's inhuman. You hear that a lot, even towards humans, because of how far they've gone. So when you have a character like that, it, I think, triggers that in your mind, because most people are sane, or some semblance of it. And you have to step, you pull back and are like, I don't want, no. Step away, because it's something that, and you don't want to be, you don't want to read it, you don't want to see it, you don't want to hear about it.
Just because something is real doesn't make it a good story. I have a whole bunch of demons running around in a series, and I've been tempted more than once to go write a story where all the characters are demons and start it with, remember, they're all demons, and end it with, I warned you, they're all demons. Because nobody does good things for good reasons.
No.
And in the end, you're not really rooting for anybody because they're all terrible. And I think I can make a good story out of it. Every time I sit down and look at it, I'm like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
Just because it's real doesn't make it a good story.
So having been on Facebook and Twitter, I can tell you, I don't know that I agree that most people are sane. But with that joke out of the way.
There's a semblance of sane over here, and then you have that WTF is going on with that person over here.
So we've mentioned a lot about female heroines that we liked. We've mentioned why we like them, but we've never sort of elaborated until Katie mentioned the femininity angle with the aristocrats. Do you think what makes a heroine interesting is different than what makes a hero, a male version of that interesting? And where is the difference, do you think? Is it in the inherent femininity? Do they have to be feminine to be good heroines?
I think it's yes and no, honestly, because in the sense that every character must be, some representation of reality. So there has to be something there that you can latch onto. Then that is no different between men and women. But in terms of what makes them interesting, I think we could argue about what makes femininity if we wanted to, but I don't think that's a really productive discussion. But yeah, I think, for me, there's a difference between male characters and female characters, and I like that difference, because if there was no difference, it wouldn't matter and we wouldn't be having this discussion. So I think that you whatever your definition of feminine is, I think you want to see it in a female character. And for some readers, that's, I want to see someone who is able to do things that I can't do physically. And for some, it's, well, I want to see someone who does things exactly like I do. And I want it to be a cozy story about a mom who bakes cookies and takes care of her children. But that's just as feminine as the woman who goes out and is a firefighter or cuts down trees with a logging crew. I mean, you're still women in the end. And so I think that definition of femininity is going to be a variable for each reader, but I think it's still going to be there.
And I think that it doesn't have to be her feminine characteristics that make her a hero, or it could be exclusively feminine characteristics and make her a hero. That's a question of setup and execution, and it can be either, it can be both, and it does not detract from the quality of the storytelling, how that's done.
I mean, there's plenty of females who are a tomboy, who do not want to wear a dress, will not be caught dead in a dress, refuses to wear makeup, probably has zero clue how to wear it or what goes where. And they're very comfortable in themselves, but they'll still go on dates with a guy. They're still a female. And, you can have that in a story. It's, you have the argument of, well, that's just a guy in a woman's body. There's plenty, we've all heard that discussion. And I think it comes down to how a woman thinks, which is considerably different from how men think. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. We've all heard that. Yeah, But it's just how the mentality, women are, we all think different from a man. There might be times when we think alike, but there's going to be so many more different differences, because how we approach a problem is not going to be the same way a man will approach a problem. There's been plenty of studies showing the female brain is different from the male brain. And, I think that's where it comes in, as to where the female character is a female character and the male character is a male character. It's how they approach a problem. It's how they find a solution. It's how they think and all of that. Or maybe I'm just weird.
There are lots of
No, I mean,
authentic ways
that's
to
the
build
big
characters.
complaint. Go.
Yeah.
There are lots
When
of
it's that
authentic ways.
complaint of, oh, we keep doing it. All right, Chloe, you go. No.
Flip a coin.
Chloe, go.
There are lots of authentic ways to build characters, and I think that it's a lot about your human experience that really shapes how you understand what the drivers and motivations of characters are across lots of different behaviors and facets of how humans are. And then you look at people who are outliers, and they're still real. And as long as they they love themselves the way that human people love themselves, and they're the heroes of their own stories, there are lots of really easy, good ways to write characters who are compelling and interesting. And it's about that question of, do they have agency, and are they doing something with it in order to improve the world the way that they see it? And women do that differently, broadly. That's what, that's a real experience.
So what I'm hearing is that this could go on for hours more. We'll probably have to come back with more nuanced discussions, because it's been interesting hearing you guys all share your thoughts. But I promised everyone an hour, and then you turn into pumpkins. So I don't want the mice to get you. So with that, this is the part where we let everyone talk about what they're writing and how they can be found. And now, Katie, you've got plans, big shenanigans going on at the house, so we're going to let you go first. So first, what are you writing at the moment, and then how can they find you on the interwebs?
Oh, thank you. I am writing the 11th novel in my most popular series, the network series. It's about Bianca Monroe. So we are launching the 10th novel in December. So I'm writing the 11th one for next week. We're actually running a Kickstarter for a special edition on the second novel. If you guys like special editions, it's gorgeous. And you can find me at katiecrossbooks.com.
Excellent. Thank you. If you got to bounce now, we appreciate your time. And we're definitely going to have you back for more episodes on the topic about how female characters are different. All right, Melissa. Oh, also, Declan, hold on, Melissa, give me just a second. I forgot. Declan also had to bounce. His Wi-Fi is not the greatest, so it happens sometimes. His show notes, or his contacts, will be in the show notes as well. So you can check it out, stalk him on the interwebs as one does. And with that out of the way, Melissa, what are you writing at the moment?
I am writing the ending soon to the War Master Lit RPG Fantasy series, which has a interesting female main character. And you can find me at melissamcshanewrites.com. I'm also on Facebook, and I'm on Twitter as MMcShaneWrites. And I have my store at nightharborpress.com.
Let me make sure I have that in the show notes. But
I don't think I gave you the store name before. We hadn't. It's a recent development.
If you drop that for me, I'll add that to your show notes. Next, Miss Jena, what are your various personalities writing?
Well, my first note is please buy stuff from Melissa's store, because all of her books are in my basement while she's in India. And so when you buy her books, you clean out my basement. And this makes me very, very happy. So, just to let you know, you are benefiting 2 authors if you buy Melissa's books. Because then I can ship them out, and they're not in my basement anymore. And that makes space for more of Melissa's books to fill up my... This is a problem that just goes around and around, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So that out of the way, Jena Rey is working on re-railing an urban fantasy that went off the rails a few years ago, pre-cancer. I kind of had to pause for a little bit, so I was working on Not Dying instead. And so it deserves some time in the limelight. So I am going back to the Fallen World and getting that all fixed up. And then we'll see. I have so many possibilities and a lot of things I'm kind of poking at. but I'm trying to get those finished first, and then we'll loop around and see what comes next. And Jana S Brown is working on a marketing book, and Jadlyn Asher is working on a May December book. So lots of things going on.
What is May
And I can
December?
be found at May
Large
December is
age
where
gap.
you have an age gap.
Oh,
So
okay.
that one's still churning. I will not start writing that until after the urban fantasy. But that's you wanted to know what each of them were working on.
No, I asked. I was curious, and I will tell you that I did my part, and I bought 4 of Melissa's books as well. So, because my son, he is a snob when it comes to books. He wants the Dead Tree edition, and so we are
That's
reading
right.
the War Master series together. Well, I'm reading it again since I'm reading it with him.
Yeah.
And he really likes it. So, although he
Good.
did say the band that's at the beginning. So when the guy's isekai'd over, he's wearing a band t-shirt, and so he asked who it was. So I showed him. He goes, "Oh, it's an old people band." And then of course I had to murder my child and get a new one.
Old people.
It's not. It's not.
Right?
No. Five Finger Death Punch is my son's favorite band.
A
And
lot
my
of people
son
in the
is
military
young.
dig it too. So
Yeah, I
I
like Five
clearly
Finger
just-
Death Punch.
I
So,
clearly just baked a defective model, and I've got to start again. Apparently.
Oh
Yeah,
wow,
well,
yeah,
I
that's
don't
just
know.
your son is doomed. Wow.
All right, Chloe, what are you writing at the moment, and then how can they stalk you on the interwebs?
All right, yes. I am finally fully pivoted into space opera, returning to a series that I wrote the first 4 books of, and it's one of those that each book has its own adventure, and there are some larger arcs, but they aren't really the main theme of the series. We just run off and have a new adventure in each book. So I've known that I wanted to come back and write another 4 adventures in this world for a while, and I finally got to my point where I could transition. I'm having a great time off on my space adventures again. You can find me at chloegarner.com or on Facebook. Best place to be is my Facebook group, but new news, I am now selling signed editions from my website, and I will get the link for that to JR for signed books. Is very exciting. Physical products are so cool, and there are stickers. That's all.
You want to know what's even cooler about it?
Hmm.
Are you ready for this? It's not in Jana's basement, so she loves it.
It's not in Jana's basement.
I would have to
Absolutely.
stop for both Melissa and mine. I have no more space.
yeah.
Nice. All right, Jennie, Miss J.F. Posthumous. And I did, to be fair, when we first met, because she's done some covers for the anthologies I've hosted with Three Ravens, I did ask her if that was really her last name, because it's just too perfect of a name for the genre she writes in. And she swears that it's on her birth certificate and everything.
Wow.
Not my birth certificate, my marriage certificate.
Same.
And my driver's license. My
Okay.
ex-husband, my current husband, his last name is Wagner. He's like, no, you got to keep that name because it's too cool. We argued for 3 months. Yes,
It is too perfect for the genre. So I you
that
did
was
well.
his argument. That and it's too cool. Wagner is too boring. You have to keep that name. So he won the argument.
I mean, my German ancestors like the name Wagner, but whatever.
Mhm.
All right. So where can they? Well, first off, what are you writing, and then where can they find you?
I am currently awaiting edits for the sci-fi series that we'll be doing a Kickstarter for early next year. Not January, because apparently January is the month that Kickstarters die. So it'll be early next year at some point. And there are 5 novels in that one. So yeah, so keep an eye out for that. I have 2 other series available, Nightshade and Lady of Death. Both have female characters that hopefully are interesting. And that's pretty much all I have going on right now, because I'm still trying to get back into writing. Yeah, that's still not happening yet. So yeah.
You have enough in edits that gives you some time to figure it out. And so eventually that runs out, though.
Everything you can find says grief can take 2 years or more. So I'm still arguing with that.
Absolutely. All right. And with that, this is the part, dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books. So do your part, people. It really does make a difference. And if you buy them direct from Madame Chloe's website or Melissa's bookstore online, you can still hop over to Barnes & Noble's, Goodreads, Amazon, and leave a review. It just won't be verified, but you can still review it so people continue buying the books you know and love. And with that, you can find us on our Linktree at linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast, where we link to all the things, the bits, shoots, the rumbles, the YouTubes, the TikToks, the Twitters. We have our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com for professional purposes only, people. You can send all of the shenanigans to Madam Stabby Stab at the Instagram, Twitter, and the email over there, linked on the Linktree. Or you can find our website on Spotify, linked at the Linktree. Bunch of gobbledygook. Trust me, just use the Linktree. But when you get there, you can support the show for as little as 99 cents a month. You can help keep the lights on. These episodes aren't free to produce, and so every penny counts. And by the time you listen to this episode, we will be desperately on the hunt for a replacement for StreamYards, because they are going from $100 a year to $550 a year, and ain't nobody got time for that nonsense. So, obviously every penny helps, dear listener. Or you could support the show more directly at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee until it floats out of their eyeballs. Speaking of, if you use the link in the show notes below in the code podcast grunts, you get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. It's a win-win. And I just realized we didn't ask what everybody drinks. I think in the future, maybe we should start asking what their favorite character would drink, because we know Jana is boring and drinks Dr. Pepper, and Melissa's all about the hot chocolate, but maybe that's not what their characters drink. We don't know. I know the war hamster lady does not like the coffee because she's a communist, but no one's perfect. And I decided
Coffee Brand Coffee has amazing hot chocolate. And
hot chocolate.
Their flavors in very, very soon for Christmas and stuff. So
for winter,
you have to remind them of that. They don't only make Coffee Brand Coffee; they make Coffee Brand Coffee hot chocolate.
Absolutely. And I did have some of the blueberry K-Cups for their coffee, and my sister visited, and she apparently shopped at the coffee shop of her brother, and it all disappeared when she left. No clue what happened. Magic. It disappeared. She was like, you could just get some more. But since she does my beta reading for me, I really can't complain but so much, because she works for free. So I guess if I gave her some coffee, it's pretty cheap, all things considered. So, all right. Thank you for coming on the show, everybody. I feel like this was an abrupt ending, mostly because this is a topic where we could go on for hours. There's a lot to say and a lot of nuance. And a lot of the answers were, well, I guess it depends. And while that's frustrating at times, it's also very true about most things in life, and can lead to some very long-winded discussions. But apparently my 4-hour episodes are not as popular as the 1 and 2 hour ones. So
technicality.
I know people get all picky. They were like, I got to go to work and I got to do stuff. I don't know what that's about. Apparently nobody gets paid to listen to me. Whatever.
That's too bad.
Yeah. I know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they need to get paid to listen to me. Anyway, we'll move on. Thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. And with that, thank you, ladies, for coming on. Katie and Declan, I'm sure, are very sorry they missed the exit. And with that, we're going to hit the end.